thank you all for coming. This session is connecting with veteran talent pools. We're really happy that you're here. My name is Pam Hoadley. I am a member of our Global Talent Brand team, and I am happy to introduce you to our panel. We have a few folks here from a number of different companies. We've got Patrick Christie from Express Scripts, Liz McLean from HP, and Dan Pienkowski from KPMG. Each of them is going to introduce themselves in just a few minutes. So I wanted to just take a minute and explain what the session was, how the session was designed. We are going to try and keep it pretty conversational. We've got a few topics that each of our panelists are going to respond to some questions, and then we did save time at the end for questions. So definitely if you have any questions, if you have some things that you want to make sure and ask the panelists about, just jot it down and we will get to it at the end. And before we get into the session, before each of them introduces themselves and tells you a little bit about their background, I just wanted to take a minute and make sure that you all were aware of some tools and things that we have available to you on LinkedIn. We've got a number of different things that will allow you to engage with veterans on our platform, as well as tools for them to engage with you as employers. One thing that, if you're not familiar with it, I would recommend that you take a look at the Economic Graph initiative that LinkedIn is really promoting right now. We've got a showcase page that you can go to and learn all kinds of information about it, but essentially we are digitally mapping the global economy to connect talent with opportunity at massive scale, and that includes veterans. So that's something that I would encourage you to check out. But two specific things I just want to make sure that you're aware of. One is our veterans site. So veterans.linkedin.com is something that I'd recommend that you check out. That's got a lot of really great tools for veterans, but also, again, opportunities for you all to engage with veterans as employers. And the other is a relatively new initiative. It's called Veterans Talent. And it's basically an open data collaboration with the US government and some others to connect veterans with opportunities. So that one is veteranstalent.io. So I would encourage you all to check out that one as well. So without further ado, I'd like each of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their background and why they are here today on our panel. We'll start with Patrick.
Sure. Thanks, Pam. My name is Patrick Christie. I'm with Express Scripts in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm responsible for delivering the military recruiting program as well as the programs for diversity and disability. Hiring veterans isn't anything new for Express Scripts. We've been doing it since we started in the late 80s. Program gained some recognition over the last couple of years, being worked off the corner of a desk by one of our ops recruiters, but our formal program's only about 14 months old. My connection to the military is that gentleman on the right of that picture. That's my dad. Lieutenant Colonel retired John Christie, United States Marine Corps. My dad did 32 years with the Marine Corps, starting in 1969, came down from Canada, joined the Marine Corps because, as he put it, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police weren't going to send enough troops to Vietnam. First half of his career was a recon Marine. He went to Vietnam with 1st Recon Battalion, ended his career second half as in Marine Corps recruiting, retired as the Assistant Director of Personnel Procurement out of Parris Island, South Carolina. So when other kids were going to work with their dads for a day, I was going to work with my dad for weeks at a time. I would travel with him over the summertime to the recruiting stations and across Texas. So recruiting is kind of a family business, as we joke. So that's me.
Great. Liz?
I'm Liz McLean. I'm a 2006 U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. So went on from there to pursue my master's in human performance, and then served as a logistics readiness officer up until about 2011, then which I made the transition to the recruiting world. So I started out working in a small firm on both the candidate and the client side, and then actually started working with just gentlemen here at Booz Allen Hamilton, where we co-ran the junior military officer hiring program. After that, I moved over to CACI, so I worked as a recruiter in the background investigator realm, also helping with the veteran assimilation a bit there. From there, I moved over to Hewlett-Packard and act as a talent acquisition manager. So while I don't work directly in the veteran space, I spend a great deal of time helping veterans to kind of understand their piece in the corporate world, and then also managers to understand how veterans can assimilate into the workplace. I'm also a military spouse, and I'm an Ironman competitor out of the Bay Area, so a lot of my free time I spend coaching wounded warriors on their quest to betterment through triathlon and actually Ironmans themselves. So that's me.
All right, well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Dan Pienkowski. Quick question for the crowd. How many people in the room here are veterans themselves today? Lots in the room. All right. So my background, for those that are veterans, I worked really hard to get up to corporal in the Marine Corps, and I got busted down to ensign in the Navy. For everybody that wasn't in the military, I worked really hard to get up to corporal in the Marine Corps, started out through boot camp and climbed that ladder. Went to Annapolis, got a degree, got a commission in the Navy, and became a leader in the Navy as an officer driving ships. My last tour was in recruiting. And that kind of made me realize, wow, I didn't know this was a real job in real corporate America. And as soon as somebody explained that to me, I was gone out of the Navy quickly afterwards. When I left the military, I had my transition. It was a fast transition. I had problems with my transition, and that kind of motivates me in the space now, but that was almost 10 years ago. Since then, I've been at Booz Allen Hamilton for about 5 years, and we kicked off and really leaned forward hard in the space around transitioning officers, bringing them into the organization. After 5 years there, I went on to HP. I did almost 2 years at HP. Similar effort, pushing forward very hard in the veteran talent pools, getting them to our organization, getting our organization ready to accept them. And now recently I've been at KPMG for almost the last 6 months. Looking back at my track record so far, I have always concentrated in this space in recruiting. I have not yet figured out how to get out of the space, so either I really, really love what I do, or I just have not yet figured out the next step. One of the things I want to highlight today before we get started is the diversity in the room, the diversity of the talent pool, and the diversity even up here on the stage today. We have people that have enlisted, commissioned officers, no active military service at all, a spouse of someone on active duty, a dependent of someone on active duty. Very, very different backgrounds. None of us ever really went to college or started out in life saying, I can't wait to be a recruiter when I grow up. We've all kind of fell into this. We've all kind of fallen into this space, just like a lot of people in the room do. You kind of fall into it because it's a passion. I don't even think between the three of us anyone has any kind of formal HR education, like an HR bachelor's degree. But what ties us is the passion in the space and the willingness to lean forward in the space. And that's what we're going to take out of here today. What we talk about, very, very forward-leaning ideas here. And it's passion and it's enthusiasm, and it's not having a credential or a secret or a special qualification that allows you to operate in this space.
Great. Thanks, guys. One thing I just want to back up for a second. There's something really special about Patrick that he forgot to share that I'd love for you to share with the group.
Pam loves the story, so I'm going to tell the story. She's heard it a bunch of times. So this is a photo from my wedding in May of 2012, and my dad and I kind of go back and forth on how the story actually goes. I remember him asking if it was okay if he wore those blues to my wedding. He remembers me asking him to wear them. Regardless, he was more than happy to oblige. He loves that uniform. He hadn't worn it for probably the better part of a decade after retiring. And what made it really special was that he actually lost 40 pounds to put that thing on. So he weighed less the day that he put that uniform on again than he did when he finished basic training in 1969.
Cue the tears. Okay. So I have a number of questions that I'm going to ask the panelists. The first thing I'd like to start with is with regards to the tools that you have available to you. There are obviously a number of different tools. I'd love to hear what are some of your favorites and why. Let's start with Patrick.
I'll start.
Start with Patrick.
Okay. So relatively new program, 14 months. We have found it beneficial to connect with the transition programs at the installations near where we have an Express Scripts site. And let me clarify, I'm talking about the actual program itself and not a TAP class, not the DOL class, the actual program itself. Think about this for those that have done any type of university recruiting as career services for transitioning service members. You can provide them with job postings, you can provide them with position details, and they will distribute that throughout the cohort. You can go to a number of career fairs that they're going to host on base and get right up in front of the folks that you're looking to recruit. Most of the bases that we work with only do a couple a year, but they augment that with some other activity. You can also go and do a hiring event just for your company. So imagine a career fair where you're the only employer. Kind of increases your odds just a bit. But it very much is like a career services office for transitioning service members. If you take it to them, they will distribute it out. It can also help with any military spouse programs that you may be working with. And the best thing about that program, it's free. It doesn't get any better than that. We're doing questions now or as we go? I didn't give the site. So, I know that gentleman. So Nick, how it works, we have a number of major sites across the country, and we just happen to be near a military base in almost every one of them. And so we can reach out to, let's say it's an Air Force base, to the Army and Family Readiness Center, and we can actually find out who the transition coordinator is, or if it's an Army base, who the ACE is, and we can build a relationship and say, I've got this number of positions, I'm looking for this particular skill set, and who do you have or can you distribute? And they're very willing, because that's their single responsibility, is to help those transitioning service members actually find employment as they're going through the transition process. Okay. So we've had a number of conversations, the three of us, about how to best leverage the transition programs, and we all, I think, kind of agree on how that works. But Liz reminded me once of the difference between the transition program and the TAP class. Do you want to share a few thoughts about that?
So the fundamental difference between the actual TAP program, as you alluded to before, being kind of like a career services center that you'd find at a university, it's your one-stop shop. So you can be an active duty person, or you can be a veteran who's already left. You can go there, you can talk to them about a plethora of items as you're getting ready to make your transition. It's absolutely fantastic. The actual TAP class, it's typically a 2-week-long session. It's something that you go through as you're getting ready to actually make the exit yourself. It's part of your mandatory transition, if you will. So they go through finances, they cover your relocation, they talk about the GI Bill, how you can utilize your education. They talk to you about disability, because that's a scary topic for people as they're trying to get out and figure out what is actually entitled to them and what they have to apply for. And then they also go into the career aspect. Are you going to be an entrepreneur? Are you going into a middle-level business? Are you getting ready to go into the corporate workplace? But the key thing you really have to remember, and this is something that Patrick and I talked about, is when you go in there as an employer, you actually have to take off your name tag, your company badge. So I can't go in there and say, hi, I'm Liz from Hewlett-Packard. I'm going to talk to you about coming to my company. It's more about doing it as a humanitarian effort. So you're talking to them about, hey, this is how we break down your resume. This is what you could be in the corporate workplace. Let's kind of look at your skill sets and help you figure out where you need to go. So you cannot go in there with the mindset thinking you're going to recruit specifically for your company in that class, that program. So the actual talent connecting tool that I use a little bit more myself, I err towards the large-scale career fairs, and I'll just highlight two that I typically tend to gravitate towards. And that's SAC, which is the Service Academy Career Conference, along with MOJO, Military Officer Job Opportunities. Those of you in the room that work in this space probably are familiar with those. But so SAC is actually one that's funded entirely by the alumni organizations for the service academies. So the West Points, the Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, Merchant Marine Academy, etc. MOJO, on the other hand, is one that is for exiting officers in general. You know, MOJO is just the service academy side, as well as senior non-commissioned officers, as long as they have their degrees. And that's absolutely excellent, because you do not see that often in this type of forum. So both of these, you're going to end up with a candidate pool with 100% bachelor's degrees, which, as we know in this space, a lot of times those are part of our prereqs for hiring, as well as an 85% candidate pool with master's degrees or above as well. So on the SAC side, you end up with about 700-ish per fair. You end up with 4 across the country, circulating throughout the course of the year. MOJO is also 4, still kind of bolstering their program, so a little bit smaller, more on the 400 to 600, depending on the location, throughout the course of the year as well. And the benefit to these two fairs is it's kind of your one-stop shop. On the SAC side, you're able to get candidates that have either just finished their initial commitment from school and from their service, so maybe the 5-year point or the 10-year point, or maybe they're retiring, so they've been serving for 20 years and are getting ready to make a transition, or maybe they've been out and they've gone back and forth and they've been dealing in different corporate workplaces or maybe done the entrepreneur thing for a change or getting ready. But baseline is they all have those academy backgrounds and credentials. On the Mojo side, same kind of thing. You're not dealing with one type of academy degree, but you're still getting the same type of candidate pool, officer, senior NCO. One benefit of using both, like either of these programs, is you get the resume packets ahead of time. This is fantastic because you can take those resume packs, you can go through all of the resumes that are in there and actually explain to your hiring manager the benefit of the resumes that are in those books. So it gives you the time. They send it out to you, I think it's 2 weeks maybe in advance, a week and a half or so. So you have all the time leading up to reach out. You can set interviews with the respective candidates and do it right there at either of the fairs. I can tell you, SAC in San Diego last year, I think I interviewed 30 candidates back to back that the managers had said, ooh, I really like this, can you tell me what they did, like how are they going to work for me? You go around the corner, you talk to them in the little room, and boom, you've already done the screening process, and it makes you that much closer to being able to move to the next step. So Mojo, the same thing, but I'll tell you one thing that they actually focus on that I love is what's called an at-ease event. So similar to like we talked about with Booz Allen, where they do these career fairs, these in-house events, at-ease takes all the logistics, logistics chaos out for you and does it themselves. So they'll bring the managers, they'll bring the candidate pools together. You don't have to worry about sending your recruiters there, but they'll mirror up the backgrounds to your open requisitions and help you to try to fill those in an expedient fashion as possible. So anyway, two that I find to be really successful if you have the people articulating to the managers properly the types of backgrounds you can get. Sure. I'm so sorry.
What are the websites for the sites?
What are the websites?
Oh, you know what, to be honest, if you just type in, I think both of them are just .coms, or if you just Google SACC or MOJO, you'll find them pretty easily.
Dan?
All right. There's a lot of tools up there. That is barely the tip of the iceberg with the tools that are out there for this candidate pool. And it's constantly changing. Even from the time we made this slide deck until here it is in front of us, one of the tools on here is gone and dead already. It has moved on in the last 2 weeks since we made this. It is a constantly changing environment. That's one of the great fun things about this space is things are always changing. My favorite tool is probably not anything where you can put on a board like this. My favorite tool was more of an attitude, more of a persona that you have to take on and a willingness to kind of immerse yourself in this space. The best method of success I ever had, thinking back to when I first started recruiting in the space, I went to all these sites. I went to all the job fairs. I went to all the URLs. You cannot possibly keep up with the amount of flow of candidates through there. There's 200,000 leaving each year. You cannot sort through that fast enough. They will always be there. The way I kind of reverse engineered it is I got on my LinkedIn profile, and Pam probably just smiled a lot here in LinkedIn here today. But I wrote my profile, I tweaked it. I used that as a marketing tool, and I changed the way, I didn't use it to advertise myself and my background on LinkedIn. I knew that the veterans leaving the service were getting a lot of help with their resume. We're getting a lot of help with interview skills. We're getting a lot of help with how to find a job. They needed someone to connect to so that they could do that next step, so they could find somebody at a company. So I wrote my profile to better reflect what they were looking for. You know, hey, you're a junior officer getting up, so I made sure I had junior officer in my profile. You have different clearances that you want to utilize when you get out in your next job. I made sure I had those in my profile. I started showing up in their searches. One of the other things that I did, people used to think I was a nomad and kind of a vagrant because every month my location would change in my profile. It wasn't because I couldn't, hold down a home, but it was because we had different needs in different cities around the US. And when you think about, well, great, how are these candidates looking for their next opportunity? They're looking for geography. So I started changing my geography to the positions I was recruiting in so that I would show up when they searched for me. And I'll tell you, probably 10 to 15 connection requests every week along the way, just by changing that. And I was getting what I was looking for. as long as I was able to articulate, and this is something that, a huge tool that everybody that recruits needs to remember, we're the recruiters. We are the ones that are looking for the people for the jobs that we have. It's okay to say, hey, veteran talent pool, I'm looking for someone in Milwaukee that does logistics. It's okay to say that and take our opportunity and put it to them. The great part, they will screen themselves out if it's not something they're interested in. They don't want to go to Milwaukee. You know, why would somebody want to go live there? They'd be close to me. But if they're not interested in it, they won't respond to it. And that was probably the biggest thing that I noticed with this whole candidate pool over the years is I could put an update out on LinkedIn or on Facebook or anywhere else. And I would say, if you meet these 3 criteria, send me an email with your resume. And I would get a lot of responses back. But the best part of it was they were qualified people that actually fit the 3 things I was looking for. People didn't send me, you know, if I was looking for blue squirrels, they didn't send me red penguins. They sent me blue squirrels. It was awesome. They responded and screened and sorted themselves so long as I was always there to respond to them. And they knew that somebody was actually seeing or reading or responding to what they were sending in. That kept the talent pool engaged. And that was probably the most valuable tool that I've ever learned over the years was treat them like any other talent pool, any other talent community, and engage them. You will reap great rewards because it is a constantly refilling and refreshing talent pipeline. And I'll stop there. We can probably get back to questions later on with it.
Great. Thanks, Dan. So next thing I want to ask you about is scaling your efforts. You all individually have obviously made big impacts within your own organizations and within this space, but I'm wondering, how do you, train people within your organizations to make an impact? Dan, we'll start with you.
All right, so scaling. Scaling is important because has anybody heard about the Department of Labor and OFCCP and the annual hiring benchmarks? Anybody heard rumors of that happening anytime soon? It's important. You know, that's a big number, and one recruiter is not going to get you there by themselves. You know, what, almost 8% is the number? When we think about if you have an organization of 50 recruiters, that's 4 recruiters just to hit that 8% number. But really, it's everyone's responsibility. So this is a talent pool that supports the jobs that we have, just like any other talent pool, any other diversity pool. So to scale, we need to make sure that we're sharing knowledge, but we're also getting buy-in from the hiring managers and our business side. One of the biggest challenges we have in the recruiting space, and this is probably best for the people that are not the hands-on recruiter but leading your recruiting organizations, you have to get the business to generate demand for this. If you want to focus on hiring those that are in transition, their first career into corporate America, out of the military, you need to get the business and you need to get the senior business leaders to buy into this and carry this message and repeat this message from the mountaintop inside your company. You know, when I go to a new organization, nobody knows who Dan Pienkowski is, and I can stand there and say, hey, hire veterans all day long, but nobody's going to hear me, and the ones that do, they don't know if they even need to listen to me or if I'm some crazy guy running the halls. But if you get those senior business leaders that people hear on a regular basis, you get them to support it and to push forward with it, more of your hiring managers will buy into it, thus generating the demand that recruiting will then meet. When we simply grab people transitioning and say, great, they're raw talent, here you go, hiring manager, take him, take him, take him. The hiring manager kind of, you know, it's like pushing a rope a lot of times because the hiring manager has needs and it might not be important to them. They might not understand the importance of scaling this across every team, every position inside your organization. It doesn't mean you have to hire the veteran for it just because they're the veteran. It means you need to expose those opportunities to that talent pool. You need to get the business to buy in and generate that demand to say, I've got these positions and I want to make sure that I see raw talent, future leader, great candidates coming my way. Recruiting, give them to me. And Patrick is going to talk about how he's been able to get recruiting to respond to that demand.
Yeah, so to Dan's point about meeting the demand and supplying the demand, it's important that you scale those efforts as wide as you can. So use the collective resources of the recruiting teams that you have. It's a great point that one person isn't likely going to be able to satisfy all of that need. So you're essentially going to turn your entire team into a military recruiting team. Okay? So in order to do that, though, they need to be educated. So we're going to teach our teams the basics of military culture and where it differs from your organization. You're going to teach them about rank structure and how that corresponds to the org charts in your organization. You're going to talk to them about the various skills and the education that you're going to acquire over the life cycle of a service career, and then the basics of compensation. So you're going to make your teams comfortable with the knowledge of really who they're talking to, rather. When they're out recruiting in the military space, you're more than likely going to find that your recruiters are going to be a little bit better off at communicating the skills and the experience of their veterans to the hiring manager. They're probably going to advocate for veterans in the candidate slate a little bit better. And ultimately, you're going to have just a more informed team. You don't have to recreate the wheel. That information's out there if you don't have it already. LinkedIn for veterans, plug. There's a lot of information for employers and a lot of information for veterans on that site. The 100,000 Jobs Mission website, there are leading practices. There's a link to it that has a deck already built for building the business case for hiring veterans. They have a Military 101, which breaks down everything you could possibly want to know about culture, about rank, about pay, education, the whole nine. And these are things that we bring into our program. We're not recreating the wheel either. We're using them in our organization as well. Syracuse University has the Institute for Veterans and Military Families, a lot of information there too. So teach your teams to become military recruiters. Take that effort past yourselves and really push it out into your team and reap the benefits from it.
Great. Thank you. Okay. One other question that I think most of this group would be interested in hearing from each of you. Wondering what is your biggest challenge when engaging with veterans that you have worked the hardest to overcome? And Dan, we'll start with you.
All right, so the biggest obstacle, or a obstacle, this is a relatively new space in recruiting. It has not had the attention over the decades that recruiting in general has. It's only been in the recent years, as the military forces have started to draw down, that this has become a much more prominent topic. And there are a lot of emotions that can go in this space because it's an emotional topic. It's an emotional talent pool a lot of times. We think about it in terms of, hey, these are warriors. They've been away from the borders of the US for a long time. We're obligated to give them a job when they come back. We need to make sure that we check our emotion versus our functionality in recruiting and find that proper balance. One of the biggest obstacles I've experienced is, I'll pick one. You don't always have to have a lot of money invested into a program to do this. This is everyone's responsibility. If we think about as recruiters, I'll take a quick crowd sourcing poll. How many of us have ever recruited for IT positions? Throw a hand in the air. All right, keep your hand in the air if you're an IT developer or you yourself have been an IT developer. Okay, but we all recruited for IT positions. You don't have to be a veteran to recruit and do well in this space. What you need to have is the confidence to know what you're looking at. You need to have the confidence and knowledge to identify what success looks like for you. Just like when we went out and recruited for IT positions, we probably sat down and talked to someone that was really smart in the space, or talked to the hiring manager so that we knew what we were looking for. The same holds true here. There's a lot of resources out there for us, a lot of veteran employee resource networks, insider organizations that are willing to help. They're not there to take over your recruiting process. They're there to help you become better recruiters and answer questions you have. But along with that, one of the obstacles is we start to think of the word veteran, as the functional skill. And we say, I need X, Y, and Z. Oh, I need to get a veteran candidate for that. There's a lot of veterans. There's 9 million veterans in the US right now, and about 250,000 new ones added each year. So just being within that veteran talent pool, there is every skill set that is everywhere else in America. It's a diversity label. And when you take that emotion out and think about it as the veteran talent pool is a diversity group, and inside that diversity group, you have your IT, you have your operations, you have your logistics. Everything else that we recruit for exists there. Sometimes it's called something different, and that's where we really earn our keep as recruiters, is to dig a little bit. You know, we don't have translators for any other employer out there other than the Department of Defense. And that's a good thing that we do this to help bridge some of that information gap. But we need to be willing to sit down and actually look at the resume and want to understand it. If you don't want to affect this space at all, and you just are looking for something to put the resume in, and it spits out, hey, they're a great fit for this job in your organization, you're going to have a lot of struggles in this space. Once you just have to be confident in who you're talking to and understand what they did functionally and how that might apply to the role that you're recruiting them for. There is not always a direct linear match. Sometimes you have to look beyond that and think about who you're hiring and why you're hiring and get the best candidate. You integrate this talent pool into everything that you do. It doesn't have to stand alone. When we try to create the separate pipeline of talent for the veteran candidates to interview in, and we say, well, you know, I met this guy, he's a veteran, he needs to go interview with this person because he's a veteran. We're doing a little bit of a disservice. We need to step back and remember that, you know what, we need to have them interview with the same hiring team and the same interviewing team that all the other candidates are interviewing for, because they possess the same skills. We just need to look at it a little bit differently.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Liz?
Okay, the obstacle that I will talk about is one I'm actually very passionate about and is a little bit touchy, if you will, too, in this space. And I don't have a problem talking about it because I am a military spouse myself. This picture here is one where I say that I was playing spouse. This is my husband returning from deployment. I was still active duty at the time, but you know, dressed up on the flight line to help welcome him home. So companies do an absolutely fantastic job, very valiant, trying to create these military spouse programs that mimic the veteran programs that are in their companies. They go through resume writing programs and, you know, spend time, money, resources working with third-party organizations like the MSCCN, which is the Military Spouse Corporate Career Network, so that they can set aside all these specific positions for spouses and help them out. But inadvertently, the companies end up doing two things incorrectly, in my opinion. The first one is they actually try to explain to the managers that the spouses have the same backgrounds as the veteran, which it was really not the case, and it actually ends up making the spouse in a position where they're doing a disservice. The managers feel that they're going to receive a candidate that has the same skill sets as the veteran when they're not. Likelihood is, unless it was a mill-to-mill couple, the spouse probably hasn't served overseas, hasn't led hundreds of people, didn't sign the dotted line, didn't make the decision if they were going to cease fire or not, and they probably haven't had the same leadership skills to make them that fire and forget weapon that the veteran has themselves. So they don't need a resume writing breakdown. They really don't. They need more of the understanding of what they bring to the table as, you know, as a spouse themselves. The second piece is once they go through the whole breakdown of the background of the spouse, the types of positions that end up being offered after all of this effort are more administrative and clerical in nature. And it's really not a problem, not to say that those are not honorable and some spouses, you know, might want them, but others have their own resumes, their own background, and are looking for a professional career in another space. But the companies have already separated those specific positions aside for the spouses, and that's all they have to offer. So the question is, how do we actually create a spouse program that helps, you know, helps the network to grow? So the key thing here is really a flexibility and more of a focus on retainment. So how many of you guys here in the room work in a remote capacity? Like at least like maybe one day a week or partially? Okay, so myself included, and that falls underneath the flexibility category. So I'll give you my situation. Married still to a pilot. We live approximately 45 minutes from the base. He needs to be typically within an hour of that circumference there. My office is 3.5 hours. I cannot drive or will not drive 7 hours in a day safely to and from. I'm not going to live there during the week and come home on the weekends when he's already gone 280 days out of the year, and I'm not really sure when he's going to be around anyway, so adding that extra space apart is really not viable. And I'm probably not going to move and just leave him there by himself. So the answer there is I work in a remote capacity, have zero problems traveling anytime they need me to. I'll go there once a week, stay in a hotel, but I need that fundamental understanding. The second piece is maybe understanding the lifestyle a little bit more. You have the comings and goings from deployment. You have the awards and accolades that are given for, the patriotic sense, and allowing the spouse to be a part of those activities, say they are in office, having an understanding of the type of lifestyle there will help them stay a bit longer. Or you look at the benefits piece. So you likely are not going to end up with a spouse that needs some medical. They don't. They're covered through their spouse already that's in the service or any of the others that go along with it. The only thing that really might need to be considered is possibly the vacation time. So say your spouse has been working at your company for 5 years, which is, hey, longer than the 18-month turnaround that we typically see now, right? They're moving across the country. Are you going to ask them to spend their 2 weeks of vacation time because they're relocating across the states? Or are you going to allow them to do that, pause, reflect a little bit, use some gray area, and then let them take their vacation time later on? Really, it seems like something really simple, but when we're looking at rules and regulations, those are things that are really, truly important to them and make a big difference, especially with the work-life balance. So if you can focus on maybe expanding like your territory a little bit more around the bases, like I was saying, we're in a 45-minute circumference of base, and then focus more on the retention piece, how can we make these spouses happy versus trying to dissect their resume. You're not going to be able to look there and find specific spouse traits. They don't exist other than being married to a vet. So that's it.
Thanks, Liz. This is great information. We have so much knowledge up here. There's one more question that I want to ask our panelists, really an opportunity for you all to tell us about your most memorable hire. So who is that and why? And we're going to start with Patrick.
So I cheated. I brought two. The gentleman top left, Sergeant Wes McFarland, United States Marine Corps. Wes came out of the Marine Corps with an interesting skill set in leadership and problem solving and project management. I met him in the parking lot in front of the Airmen and Family Readiness Center after a TAP class. We were walking back to our vehicles together. I noticed that he had decals from Camp Pendleton. My dad was stationed at Pendleton. So we connected over conversations about that base and about the local area. Gave him a business card, had his resume the next day, connected on LinkedIn that night. And he was in the hands of a recruiter a matter of days later, interviewed the following week, and 45 days after I met him, he started in a leadership role in a pretty critical part of our business. The gentleman on the bottom, Senior Master Sergeant Mario Barrios, retired from the U.S. Air Force after more than 2 decades. He was a load master, so he came out with some interesting skills in supply chain and planning and execution, project management. He actually met one of our operations recruiters mid-2012 at Scott Air Force Base at a career fair event. They managed to stay together and stay in contact with each other. Mario was probably 6 months from retiring, and they checked in all the time. So when we were at an event, Mario would come and see us. They would have a constant email chain going on. Mario retired, actually didn't come to work directly for us, went to work for a for-profit educator, but quickly learned that he didn't have the support and the role that he was looking for. And so he once again reached out to his ops recruiter, Aaron Jones. Aaron just happened to have a position for Mario for which he was perfect for. Interviewed, and about 3 weeks after that had an offer in his hand and started shortly thereafter as a service delivery manager for us. So that one took about 18 months, right? So 45 days, 18 months. So what's the point of the 2 hires? It's not to go look for vets in parking lots.
But
it works. It does work if you happen to know Camp Pendleton decals. It's more so to say that the base resources work. So let me bring it full circle from my earlier. Both of those gentlemen were met through the transition program, through events sponsored by the transition programs. One a career fair, one a TAP class. The base resources work. The other is to say that it's not always a quick process. For every 45-day hire like a Wes McFarland, there could be an 18-month hire like Mario Barrios. So it's not always an immediate to your needs. You're going to build relationships with veterans the same way that you would with every other candidate, and maybe a year and a half down the road, you'll get to bring one of them in. Those are two of my favorites.
Great, thanks. Liz.
Dan talked a little bit earlier about the concept of passion in the field that we work in. And for me, that's exceptionally the case. I'm very, very passionate about this field, about helping vets in general. This is the cover of After Action magazine. So this came out actually a few weeks ago. It's for Wounded Warrior. That's myself and Aaron, one of the guys I train, and then us in the shop there. So flashback last year, work in the recruiting space, work in the veteran field, do the races on the side, decided, you know what, I really want to help some of these warriors that I work with on a regular basis use fitness as a means to help them cope as well. Put an ad out, said, hey, you know, Ironman competitor willing to help train any wounded warrior on their quest to betterment through fitness, triathlon specifically. Was training about 15 at a time, but Aaron reached out specifically. He said, hey, you know, really want help. Very few words, man of very few words. Said, okay, buddy, let's work on this, let's do it. We start going down this path, training. I'm writing all his plans. Start learning more about him. He was a Marine, served overseas several times, was injured pretty badly, came home, didn't really have much of a welcoming, you know, from his unit, didn't get much help from the government, didn't really have much of a family. Ended up on the streets of San Francisco for 2 years, became an alcoholic, started using meth, became addicted to meth, and there he sat. Had someone not walked by, looked at him and said, why is this 28-year-old kid sitting on the street corner? What is he doing with his life? And asked him if he wanted to come into one of the rehabilitation centers, which somehow no one had asked him before, offered him some help. He wouldn't be here even today. So someone brought him in off the street. He started to get treatment, which is when he actually ended up reaching out to me, I found out. So he started going through the PTSD program, had severe PTSD himself. Me and myself, having served in combat a few times, we related very well in terms of sometimes you have a hard time coming back to the States and feeling that there's as much weight and purpose put on things. You feel like people don't think things matter as much or don't want to make as much of a difference. So anyway, kept going down that path. We raced and trained together, Palm Springs, a few other places. He started calling me Mom because I was on him on everything. Our emails went from 1 to 2 words to these essays, and if I didn't respond to him immediately, I was getting texts consistently like, hey Mom, what's going on with this? I'm like, I'm not your mom, I'm like a year older than you, but kept going on from there. So then, of course, we started, as he was learning to have some more comfort and strength and stability in himself through fitness, on our bike rides and whatnot, we started talking a little bit more about education. I'm a big education person. I'm like, you need to finish school, you need to finish school. Once you finish school, then you can start, you know, working towards your career. He hasn't had to work since the service. No one's even talked to him about it. So next thing we know, we start working. He'd only had a couple units to go to finish school anyway, so he had done most of it overseas. He finished school. Then we started pushing him in front of some different companies, talking about his background, that fire and forget weapon, smart as a whip. You guys, any of you talk to him in this room, you would be instantly impressed. Poised, sophisticated, 1 year sober, doing really well. Fit, looks great, very professional all around. So anyway, long story short, we were contacted by Wounded Warrior magazine, and they did a feature on us, and they're called Strength in Numbers, about, you know, using your fitness and health as a betterment to become a little bit more, you know, professional and develop yourself from there. But we had several companies reach out interested in hiring Aaron, of course, which I was relentlessly following up with and working with him on resume skills and interview skills and all that. And I'm happy to say that actually, as of about 6 weeks ago, Aaron was hired by Walmart. And very few things actually make me cry, but that one definitely did. So I was very, very pleased with that. And then added bonus, Joe, you see in the red shirt there, so he was my coach. He's a coach for the Olympics, and he volunteered to help Aaron. He did all the biomechanics and stuff with Aaron there and became really vested in the veteran and wounded warrior space. While doing the consulting and coaching on the side, was ready to make a move into kind of the corporate world himself from the shop that he owned, and so he actually started with Hewlett-Packard as of last Monday too. So I'm duly happy for that.
Dan.
All right. I got to stand because this guy motivates me so much, so I apologize. So I'm going to talk about a young man named Tyson Quink. Tyson, I love this story. He motivates me to no end. I'll tell you a little bit about him first. He is a graduate. 2009, he graduated from West Point. He graduated with his bachelor's in engineering and computer science, the global geoinformation systems, I think is a technical term for it. But he graduated from West Point and went on to become an Army artillery officer. Now, for those that don't know what an Army artillery officer is, he went to Afghanistan with his company, artillery fire direction officers. His job is to put big things that go boom on the bad guys. So from way far away, you gotta chuck those 500-pound rounds of explosives onto the bad guys and only the bad guys. So that's a pretty tricky, a real tricky evolution right there. So he's very smart. As a fire direction control officer, his job was to get the information from the intelligence side of the house, figure out, okay, the bad guys are here. Now we need to use our computer systems and take into account all the variables to put our rounds on the bad guys without doing anything to the other good guys in the area. So technically, very smart. On top of that, he was a platoon leader. That means he didn't do it alone. He had a platoon of 27 men that worked for him. So he was the father figure, the mentor, the brother, the leader, the boss, everything you can imagine. All the men turned to Tyson and said, hey, sir, lead us. Hey, I just got my Dear John letter in the mail. My girlfriend broke up with me. I'm feeling bad. I need your moral support. I need your physical support. I need your leadership support. He took care of all of that for his men. After he left Afghanistan, he went back and he got his dream job of being an assistant coach at West Point for the football team. So backing up, not only is he a graduate of West Point in computer science, he was a 4-year football player there. Division I starter on the offensive line for 4 years. So Tyson and then go on to be a platoon leader in Afghanistan. The guy just drips leadership when he walks around the room. So anyway, he comes back from Afghanistan, gets out of the Army, gets to be the assistant coach at West Point football. Dream job. So in the crazy twist of events, how did I end up anywhere near hiring him? Well, Tyson's a military spouse. His wife is still on active duty in the Army. She got orders down to Austin, Texas at, I think it was Fort Bliss, which means Tyson has to pack up and not live his dream at West Point and go down to be with his wife in Austin, Texas. Now, I was at HP at the time, leading a lot of the efforts we had in our veteran recruiting. I got the email from him. He moved down to Austin. He remembered meeting someone from HP a long time ago in an airport, and when he got there, he either found an old business card or he just looked him up on LinkedIn and remembered his name. But anyway, they connected, and it was a senior level, very senior person at HP. They passed the resume to me and said, here you go, Dan, I met him, he's a good guy. I would really love to see him here. And I get the resume and I go, okay, leader, computer science, technology. He's also getting his master's degree from Penn State in geoinformation systems. Really smart guy, technically very bright, leadership very bright. We have an office in Austin. When I was there, we had an HP office. I looked at it and I said, we should have this guy hired in about 3 hours today. This is going to be awesome. In the twist, it wasn't that easy. It was a much longer road. I reached out and gave Tyson a call, and we spent an hour and a half on the phone, and we talked about everything. He didn't know what HP did other than laptops and printers and ink. He didn't know, and he said, I don't know what to do there. So rather than me translating his resume, instead I spent the hour translating our organization and what we did and the positions we had and what a director versus a team leader versus a manager, what those meant to terms he could understand so that he would be motivated to want to do them, and he could understand where he could fit. So anyway, I took his resume. I was gung-ho on this guy. I loved the resume. I gave a couple phone calls to recruiters I knew down in Austin. I went to our careers page. We had about 55, 60 positions posted. It's like, hey, this is awesome. The feedback I got, though, this is why it resonates so strongly with me. Some of the feedback I got from recruiters was, well, you know, hey, this looks good. He's got some great skills, but none of my recs are marked for veterans. Or none of my recs are marked for military spouses. I don't know if we can do anything with them. And it made me step back and say, you know, what do you mean it's not marked for veterans? And it was an education. It's not because anybody was trying to be mean or rude or wrong, but it was that education piece about understanding this is a talent pool and a diversity group with skills. Veteran, spouse, military spouse, that's not the skill that we're hiring for. That's the diversity group they belong to. So anyway, there was even a campus interview night where all the hiring managers were going to be in a room, and I said, you know what, hey, yeah, he's a little bit out of being 1 year from graduation like most campus programs are, but I called the campus recruiters. I was like, you know, do you think there's a chance we can get him in there because, hey, it's his first job after leaving the military, he's new to the area, he doesn't know anybody, but if we get him in front of a hiring manager, they're gonna say yes. We just have to get him there. And, you know, hey, we've got processes. We need to follow processes and rules and be fair in our hiring practices. So we couldn't get him into that campus interview night because he didn't really fit the criteria that was laid out. You know, we wanted graduates within a certain time period. He wasn't one. So again, we had to step back and say, you know what, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Let's find another way to get him in front of hiring managers. So I got on leadership calls with our recruiting team. Any chance I got. This was about 8 weeks it took me of running around with his resume in my hand, shoving it in everybody's face that I could. I was kind of obsessed, but two, was getting to the point where I said, I have to make this work. If it doesn't, it's shame on us. Eventually, somebody got tired of hearing me whine and said, you know what, to give it to me, I'll get it to my hiring managers, and they did. And as soon as the hiring managers picked up the phone and called Tyson, they did a phone interview. 3 of them were sold on him and said, I got to have him on my team. And it went very, very quick after that. But once they got to that hiring manager point where the decision maker was, and that hiring manager could make the decision, the balance of raw talent versus documented skill versus the need for mentorship within his team and the impact it's going to play, that's where that decision needed to be made. And once we got him there, then it was just a fight amongst the hiring managers who's going to be the one to hire him. So one of the other things, another photo that I love about Tyson, Tyson is also a big runner. This is a picture of Tyson doing the Army 10-miler. And if you look closely at the picture, you kind of go, well, what took so long to interview him now after seeing that, right? That's not why we hired him. We hired him for his skills in IT, for his leadership. All the other parts about it, that doesn't define what he can and can't do in our office. Being a military spouse has no bearing on the role he plays in the office every day. And that's why this resonates with me so long. This happened about a year ago. You know, he's still there, still in the role. He's an IT project manager. But him being a military spouse and going through that interview process, hearing that label and hearing, well, you know, the job isn't marked for a spouse. The job isn't marked for a veteran. I'm not sure what we're going to do with him. It was an education piece, and that resonated a long time with me, because if we hit that education piece and work on taking care of the recruiter's knowledge to make them comfortable to talk about IT skills, logistics skills, they just happen to do it in a uniform. They happen to do it with their face painted green. That's the same as talking to an employee from any other company with those same skills. We still have to have a layer of understanding about how it operates in their universe, not ours. But, you know, being a spouse, that has no bearing on his job. He's a motivating guy because of his education, because of the things he's accomplished in life, because of the things that he's learned and applied over the years. That's why we hire someone like Tyson. We don't hire him because of the diversity group that he belongs to. And I keep in touch with him. He's enjoying himself there, and I told him that I would tell his story on the promise that nobody reaches out and tries to recruit him away until I get a chance to. So yeah, unfortunately I put his last name up there. I'm sorry about that. But that's one of my most memorable hires in the space. You know, one of the other memorable hires that I have, it was kind of awkward for me up here to talk about it because she's sitting on the stage now. You know, for years I told her she was my favorite, and then to get up here and do this, it was a little weird. That's why I had to get away to stand up here.
So the good news and the bad news about passionate people is that we did not leave time for questions. But what I'm thinking is, if you're interested, if you have some questions, we might have like a minute or two. We've a minute. Anyone have any questions? You want to come up to the mic?
Sales positions. Okay, so we are in the very, very early stages of sourcing candidates who are veterans. We're so excited, but what we really want to make sure of is that it's a whole nother language trying to source veterans, and what we don't want to do in finding these sales positions and filling them with the right candidates is overlook people. So can you help us figure out some maybe keywords or language or tools that we can use online when we're sourcing candidates for those sales positions so that we don't overlook them?
Great question.
I'll jump in with something for you to think about. Take your sales positions and make sure that they're understandable. One of the biggest challenges in this space is 49% of the time we don't understand their resume. 51% of the time they don't understand the job description. And there probably is the perfect match there, but they don't know it is for them, and you don't know. Make sure your job description is very descriptive and you're clear on what you're looking for and what the role is. A well-written job description advertised to where veterans hang out at will generate results right there. And I talked about it a little bit before, they're going to be able to screen themselves out to bring good people to you, and you'll be able to see the good ones that are interested and actually talk to them about it. But that's a good way to go about this, is just make sure you can identify what you want. You will get a lot of responses back.
Think of like the leadership traits too. I mean, if you want someone that's able to go out and communicate well and isn't going to have an issue, you know, in a sales capacity, kind of as I alluded to before, the fire and forget weapon kind of aspect, you give it to them and they'll just run with it. I mean, it's a pretty general field, but you can tell.
So can they connect with you guys if you have questions? That we obviously ran out of time, but feel free to connect with our panelists and ask them the questions that you have. And then maybe you guys could publish some of those answers on your profiles. We can all go back and check those out. Is that good? Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much.